Hey, what's up, everybody? True Boxing here. Thank you for coming back to get hit with the truth. So today we are continuing my boxing awards, my 2022 boxing awards. Today's video is going to be on the upset of the year in 2022. So, I mean, this one's pretty self-explanatory, I would think so. I think you guys all understand what an upset is. When the guy that's not supposed to win ends up winning. And the ones that are probably the bigger underdogs and in the fights that mean the most are probably the ones that usually finish, at the top. So, basically we are going to have, I'm going to have one candidate that covers 118 and down any big fights. I really don't cover those divisions one by, as I do the 12 above it. But, I will pay attention to the bigger fights, the more meaningful fights, and then we'll try to have a candidate from every other division. So we are going to start with the with 122 because I didn't have a candidate from 118 down. I didn't think there was a major upset worth talking about. At 122, I didn't have a candidate either. I didn't think there was a big upset at 122. 126, I had 3 candidates. First of which is Mark Magsayo's 12-round majority decision over Gary Russell Jr. Magsayo was a monster underdog. He was undefeated, but Russell, had been champion for like 7 years. He held almost 7 years to the day. He held that world title, the WBC belt. Magsayo was an undefeated Filipino fighter on the rise, but nobody gave him a chance. He went in there and walked away with a close majority decision win. That was definitely a major upset. It stopped the longest reign in boxing, longest title reign in boxing. Also at 126 was Leigh Wood's 12th round TKO of Michael Conlan. Now, Wood was the champion coming into this fight, the WBA regular champion. But Michael Conlan, most people felt Michael Conlan was going to come in there and outbox Leigh Wood. Leigh Wood had upset Can Xu to capture the WBA regular belt. That was considered an upset. But Michael Conlan, had been brought up slowly and everything by Bob Arum. And most people felt he was the heir apparent. And this was his title opportunity. And he was going to get it, and he was outboxing Leigh Wood. It was a good action-packed fight, but he was outboxing Leigh Wood. And then Leigh Wood caught him in the 11th and put him down, and then finished him with a brutal right hand that put him through the ropes in the 12th round, and Leigh Wood retained the title. So that's the next candidate. And then also at 126 was Luis Lopez's 12-round, I believe it was a split decision over Josh Warrington, or it might have been majority decision. I think it was a majority decision, actually, over Josh Warrington to capture the IBF title. I mean, Luis Lopez had pulled off an upset over the, what was his name? Jesus, is it Gabriel Flores, I think the guy's name was, the guy from Stockton, at 130 pounds in 2021, and that kind of led him into the mandatory position to fight for the WBA title. The IBF title, I'm sorry. But, and he had beaten a couple of, low-level fighters. But Josh Warrington, this was the second time around. He was coming off of just a big win over Kiko Martinez. And the fact that Lopez was going into his town, that was a big deal. And it led to, Lopez going in there and walking away with a big victory. So that was huge right there. Very big victory for Luis Lopez. At 130, we have a couple candidates. First up is Hector Luis Garcia's 12-round unanimous decision over undefeated Chris Colbert. Nobody saw this coming. Chris Colbert was projected to be the heir apparent at 130. He was projected to defeat Roger Gutierrez and capture the WBA belt. And Gutierrez had to pull out with an injury, so Colbert went forward with a fight. And he took on the unknown, undefeated Garcia. And Garcia went in there and cleanly outboxed him and dominated Chris Colbert to a 12-round unanimous decision. And it led to him getting the title shot and capturing the belt against Gutierrez. So that was big. Joe Cordina is the other candidate. His second round knockout of Kenichi Ogawa. He was undefeated. Ogawa was facing two mandatories, had two mandatories coming up back to back, but the IBF allowed him, after capturing his belt at the end of 2021, they allowed him to make an optional defense. He came in against Cordina, and Cordina just fucking caught him with a brutal second round knockout. That's a fight, that's a knockout of the year candidate, and pulled off the upset and captured the IBF belt. That was a big win right there. 135, I have three candidates. First is Jeremiah Nakathila, 6th round TKO of Miguel Berchelt. Miguel Berchelt had been the man at 130 for the better part of about 4 years. He had really taken over the division outside of Lomachenko stopping through and winning belts and stuff. You know, Miguel Berchelt had dominated at 130 and then lost in 2021 to Oscar Valdez. So, you know, he took the time off. He decided to move up to 135. And Jeremiah Nakathila was also moving up, and Nakathila just consistently beat Berchelt to the punch, beat him up, and stopped him in the 6th round in an upset. So that was big. Also is which Zepeda? William Zepeda's unanimous decision over Joseph Diaz Jr. is another candidate. You know, JoJo is coming off the loss to Devin Haney for the WBC title the year before in 2021. He's taken on the undefeated Zepeda, who, you know, had a couple decent wins on his resume, but nobody saw him getting in there and just completely dominating Diaz the way he did. And he completely outworked JoJo for the majority of the fight and walked away with a clean 12-round unanimous decision. You know, and that was definitely a big upset at lightweight right there. It got Zepeda. He's in the title mix, you know, at some point, and he knocked off a pretty solid former champ in Diaz. Also a candidate was Jermaine Ortiz's 10-round unanimous decision over former champ Jamel Herring. Herring, like Miguel Berchelt, had been stopped and lost his 130-pound title against Shakur Stevenson, and he wanted to make one last run, so he decided to move to 135, and he ran into undefeated Jermaine Ortiz, and Ortiz completely dominated Herring for 10 rounds to unanimous decision, and that forced Herring into retirement. So that was a big upset, Ortiz beating Herring, and actually led Ortiz to almost upsetting Vasily Lomachenko later in the year. So see what these upsets the benefit of them, they do lead to opportunities. 140, I don't have a candidate. 147, I gave it to San Martin's. I think is it Santa? Hold on. I think it's San Martin's unanimous decision over Abel Ramos. You know, Abel Ramos is a tough guy at welterweight. He had defeated Omar Figueroa Jr. He fought Yordenis Ugas a couple years ago, pretty tough. And he was a top 10 guy at 147 coming in. And he ran into this guy, San Martin, and was upset, lost a 10-round unanimous decision, and it knocked him out of the top 10. So that was kind of a quiet but a major upset at 147. 154 was, in my eyes, Tony Harrison's 10-round unanimous decision over Sergio Garcia. Tony Harrison, a former champ, but he hadn't really done anything since he defeated Jermell Charlo back in 2018. He lost the title back to Charlo in 2019. And then he didn't return until 2021, where he fought, I think Brian Formella, I think the guy's name was. Something like that. I can't remember the guy's name exactly, but that's the point. He fought to a draw with that guy, so he did not look good. He had some personal stuff going on. And he came into this fight against Sergio Garcia, and Garcia was coming off of giving Sebastian Fundora maybe the toughest fight of his career, or one of the two toughest fights of his career at the time. And, he went in there, and Tony Harrison completely dominated Sergio Garcia. I mean, he picked him apart, completely outboxed him to a one-sided decision. And a lot of people were surprised by that because of how well Garcia had fought Fundora. So this one was, in my opinion, this was a pretty good upset at 154. 160 was, it was tough to find one, but I gave it to Jimmy Kelly's unanimous, or was it majority decision win over Kanat Islam. Islam was a guy who I had ranked at the back of the top 10 a couple years back at 160. He was undefeated. He was kind of on the rise. He had put himself in a decent position. And then Jimmy Kelly went in there and quietly scored a majority decision victory that ended up leading Kelly to a showdown with Jaime Munguia, later in the year. And Munguia knocked him out. But, it was an upset. It was a surprise. So, yeah, Kelly over Islam is the upset of the year at middleweight. 168, I got a couple options. It's John Ryder's 12-round split decision over Daniel Jacobs. Daniel Jacobs was a former champ. He was coming in against Ryder stylistically. Most people were picking Jacobs, but Ryder was considered a live underdog. But Jacobs' first half of the fight had pretty much outboxed Ryder. But in the second half, especially like the last 3-4 rounds, John Ryder really turned it on, put the pressure on, and he ended up walking away with a close split decision win and an upset that has led Ryder potentially to a Canelo fight. A lot of people think Ryder is the front runner to land the Canelo fight in May, so we'll see. The other option was Vladimir Shishkin's, our nominee was Vladimir Shishkin's unanimous decision over Jose Ustadegi. Ustadegi, a lot of people want to see, he's a former champ, a lot of people want to see him come back into the mix at 168. And Shishkin, was an undefeated fighter and, considered a live underdog, and he went in there and really consistently beat Ustadegi to the punch and scored a convincing unanimous decision. So this was considered kind of a mild upset, and it ended up being a nominee for me. 175, I had about 3 fights that are nominees. First up, Dimitri Bivol's 12-round unanimous decision over Canelo Alvarez as he retained his light heavyweight title. I don't know how people are going to view this one, but I do know one thing very clear is Canelo was a sizable favorite going into this fight. Now, a lot of people, myself included, felt Bivol could do this. He could pull the win off. But I, like most everybody else, picked Canelo because Canelo had been on a hot streak, and considered to be in his prime, and also considered to be the pound-for-pound king of boxing. And Bivol went in there and cleanly outboxed the pound-for-pound king of boxing. So, that's major when you can cleanly outbox the pound-for-pound best fighter. I don't care if he was supposed to, if he was moving up a weight class or not. Canelo was projected to win, and that's it. So, definitely a big upset right there was Bivol over Canelo. Also making the list was Sadabaldiev's 6-round TKO of Maxim Vlasov. Vlasov just a year prior had fought Joe Smith tooth and nail for the vacant WBO title at 175, and almost pulled it off. There was a lot of people that thought Vlasov won the fight. And then he ran into this Sadabaldiev, and Baldiev, pretty much outworked him. Vlasov looked like a shell of himself, and he ended up, being stopped in the 6th round, and then he retired. So Sadabaldiev gets himself a top 10 spot with that upset, and that's a big deal. And then the third candidate at 175 was John Pascal's. What was it? I think he had his unanimous decision. Yeah, unanimous decision over Fanlong Main. Fanlong Main was an undefeated fighter. Nobody really, he hadn't really beaten anybody major, but he was still undefeated, and John Pascal, at some point, you think the guy's finally going to run out of steam and be over the hill, and he went in there and cleanly outboxed him and outworked Meng to a unanimous decision, and now that's led Pascal to where, he's got a good chance of getting another title shot at the age of 40. So, that was a major win. He's still competing at a high level, and it was an upset. At cruiserweight, only one candidate. This is an easy one. Jaio Pataya's 12-round unanimous decision over Maris Bradis. Not many times is a fighter clearly number one in a division, he fights a guy, loses, and that guy moves straight to number one. That's how big of a fighter, how much Bradis over the last 4 or 5 years took over cruiserweight, especially since he won the World Boxing Super Series Season 2, by defeating Junior Dorticos. So, you know, he had put up a strong resume. He was the reigning #1 fighter, and he ran into Opetaia, who really hadn't beaten anybody, you know, legitimate, any top 10 guys, and Opetaia just cleanly outworked Briedis to a unanimous decision and captured the IBF belt. That was a big upset right there. Even though, you know, cruiserweight doesn't provide big names, but that was a big upset in boxing. And then the heavyweight, you know, nominee is Derek Chisora's 12-round split decision over Kubrat Pulev. I really had to find one here, and I actually predicted this guy to win, Chisora to win, but, you know, Pulev's a good fighter, and, you know, he had beaten Chisora the first time. So for Chisora to come in there, coming off of back-to-back losses, losing 3 out of 4 fights, to come in there and you know, do enough to win by split decision, I felt that was an upset technically, and even though I called it, and, you know, that's my nominee at heavyweight. But now we're going to look at the top 5. From 5 to 1. Number 5 goes to Mark Magsayo's 12-round majority decision over Gary Russell Jr. at featherweight to capture the WBC featherweight title. Yes, this was a big upset. The reason it wasn't higher is because Russell did injure his shoulder and had to fight with one arm, and still almost beat Magsayo with one arm. So, but it was an upset. He stopped a 7-year run, a near 7-year run. I think we were about a month and a half away from 7 years where Gary Russell had been WBC champion. He stopped the longest reign in boxing, you know, title reign in boxing. And yeah, this one had to make the top 5, you know, even though Russell was injured. Number 4 goes to Hector Luis Garcia's 12-round unanimous decision over Chris Colbert at 130-pound super featherweight. A lot of people are going to say, well, this wasn't a title fight, you know, or the win over Gutierrez should have been in. No, a lot of people thought Gutierrez and Garcia was 50-50 going in. But the fight with Colbert, nobody gave Garcia a chance in hell. Colbert was supposed to wipe the floor with Gutierrez, and, you know, Garcia came in and completely dominated Colbert over 12 rounds. That was considered to be a big upset. It was a Showtime main event. So that definitely for me, and the fact that led to him fighting for the title against Gutierrez and winning it, and then it led him to a fight with Gervonta Davis, even though he lost at the beginning of this year, a couple weeks ago. You know, that was still a major upset in 2022. Number 3 goes to John Ryder's 12-round split decision over Daniel Jacobs. You know, Jacobs, again, even though Jacobs hadn't been fighting at a high level since pretty much he lost to Canelo, you know, people still consider Jacobs to be the sizable favorite going into this one against Ryder. Ryder was a live underdog, but Ryder went in there and closed the fight strong against a veteran former champ and a good boxer who was beating him, you know, probably 7-8 rounds into the fight. Danny Jacobs was winning that fight cleanly. And then Ryder just turned it around and did enough to earn a 12-round split decision that led him to becoming the interim super middleweight champ, and is potentially going to lead him to a Canelo fight this May. So that was a major upset, and a lot has come from it. Number 2, I'm giving love to Jai Opetaia's 12-round unanimous decision over Mairis Briedis. I know a lot of people are going to be like, well, these guys aren't well known. The thing is Mairis Briedis really took over cruiserweight. He won the World Boxing Super Series Season 2. He was the man. He'd been in there with the best fighters. He's still the only guy to give Alexander Usyk an extremely tough fight that you didn't know when the final bell rang if he was going to win or not. And he definitely gave him the toughest fight of his career, bar none. And, you know, Briedis went in a heavy favorite. Opetaia wasn't even ranked in the top 10, you know, the overall top 10. And Opetaia went in there and absolutely outboxed Briedis and beat him cleanly. So I got to give Opetaia love. That was the second biggest win. To knock off a number 1 guy in the division when you're not even ranked in the top 10, that's huge. But the number 1 fight, the upset of the year, this one's clear for me. Dimitri Bivol's 12-round unanimous decision over Canelo Alvarez. Again, as I said when I named this as a nominee, people are going to criticize Bivol, criticize this choice because Bivol was a true 175 pounder, and people like myself thought that he could do something like this. But you look at the optics. Canelo was the sizable favorite going in. Most people did not feel he was going to lose this fight. And he was also the pound for pound king of boxing. And whether it was his division or not, he was the favorite, the sizable favorite, and Bivol cleanly outworked him and outboxed him to a clean unanimous decision. So for me, that's all I needed right there. So for me, the upset of the year absolutely was Dimitri Bivol's 12-round unanimous decision over Canelo Alvarez to retain the WBA light heavyweight title at 175. So that's it. That's what I got. That's my 2022 upset of the year video. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, smash the like button, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. I appreciate any and all support. This is True Boxing. You've been hit with the truth.